have questions, put them in the chat box, and then we'll get to as many as we can. I am going to take a very little time because we really want to focus on our wonderful statewide office holders. Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, Secretary of State Jim Condos, Treasurer Beth Pearce, Auditor Doug Hoffer, and Attorney General TJ Donovan. And I want to give us all kudos for actually getting everybody together in one evening with, I think, less than 2 weeks notice. Everyone is extremely busy, and I'm just so grateful and happy to see that all of our statewide folks were able to make this. So we are very quickly going to get to the questions. And I just want to say that we in Vermont, I think all you have to do is pick up a newspaper and realize, look at the national news and realize how incredibly fortunate we are to have dedicated, committed leaders who stay true to democratic values, both with the large D and the small d. And I am just very, very proud to be VDP chair with such leaders at the helm. So thank you all very much. Without further ado, the way we're going to do this is we're going to ask, we came up with a couple of very general questions that I think will give a really good opportunity for our statewide office holders to kind of give us an idea of their priorities. So let's just launch right in. Each of you will have 2 minutes. And as someone said, we'll be giving you the hook otherwise, hopefully in a subtle way. We're going to start with Lieutenant Governor Gray. Question 1, and we're going to ask this of all of our statewides. With the legislative session in full swing and some very important bills on the floor in the coming months, what is your office's top priority during this session and then following the session? Lieutenant Governor Gray.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Claire. Thank you to everyone tuning in tonight. It's awesome to be in this virtual gathering with TJ, Beth, Doug, and Jim. Sorry. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to give a brief update on what's happening in my office. And I think I'll start with just what happened when the legislature ended last year, and that really driving the priorities of the office. I spent a day per week in a different county in Vermont over the last 8 or 9 months, and visited 26 towns, met with more than 60 different organizations and hundreds of Vermonters. And there were 5 things that came out of those visits. Our workforce crisis, especially in the human services and nursing sector, a housing crisis, everything from workforce housing to housing for our older Vermonters, a childcare crisis, which we see and feel, especially working parents every day, a mental health care crisis, especially amongst our young people, and then needed access for broadband, specifically telehealth. And I put together 25 different recommendations based on things that I heard from many of you, but from Vermonters across the state, and presented that to the governor and legislative leaders at the beginning of the session. And so those are my top 5 priorities. Again, my job really is presiding over the Senate every day. I'm in Montpelier with the gavel, helping to get legislation across the line, using the legislative procedures to the best of my abilities, but also just trying to keep an office that's open and accessible, running a regular seat at the table series, which I hope we'll get to talk about tonight, and a lieutenant governor for a day, welcoming hundreds of school kids into the State House virtually. So trying to do all I can to keep our democracy alive and deliver for you and deliver for our communities. How did I do, Anne?
Thank you very much. You get a gold star for timing. Excellent. All right, that allows us to move on to Secretary of State Jim Condos. Secretary Condos, what is your office's top priority during this session and after the session?
Election. What can I say? It's this year it is the election cycle year. We started off with the governor, when the governor called it the legislature back for a special session in the fall. We asked to be able to stick on the bill some legislation for town meeting day in light of the pandemic. He told me no, that can be taken care of in the first weeks of the session. So we worked with House and Senate leadership to move that bill to get it to a point where it could move and move quickly. And I can honestly say I've never seen a bill move as fast as that did. the House got it out by the end of the first week. The Senate got it out in the middle of the next week. And then the governor took until the following week to sign it into law. And it made just some substantial changes that we had used during the previous COVID year for town meeting day. Like, for instance, allowing towns to use Australian ballot, moving their town meeting day to a date certain further out. So those are the kinds of things we have. On the national front, I've been dealing with, I've met actually with Senator John Tester, Schumer, Klobuchar, Manchin, Leahy. Part of the mission to try to get Manchin to support the John Lewis Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. I also met with Governor Walz from Minnesota, Cooper from North Carolina, Brown from Oregon, Wolf from Pennsylvania, and Evers from Wisconsin. There were about 8 or 9 AGs on the call, including the deputy for TJ. And really, we're trying to get Congress to move something. Actually, I shouldn't say Congress, but the Senate to move some language to try to protect our democracy, which frankly is being demolished by the Republicans across the country. And I'll stop there.
Great. Perfect timing. Thank you very much. And moving on to Treasurer Beth Pearce, I'm sure that you have some priorities on your plate this legislative session. What would be your top priority during this session and then moving on?
Sure. Well, first, I just want to thank Jim for all the national work he's done on protecting voter rights. You're a leader, and I just want to say thank you very much for doing that. We have a number of priorities. It goes to our central theme in the office, which is making sure that everybody has a right and to a lifetime of financial well-being. And so we're looking at a number of things. We've had since 2013 a local government advisory committee that helps us put $33 million roughly out to local communities and through VITA, the housing agencies, through the economic development agencies. We've done a lot of work with NeighborWorks on energy and housing. We've done some work on lowering the cost of higher education. We're looking to expand that this year, and we're looking to expand the membership of the board so that we can do new things. We did a program with the Community Loan Fund on food and farm, and we've done some work on childcare as well. So we're looking to do that. Folks have probably heard a lot about the pension bill, and now that we're moving forward on some type of agreed upon with the employee group's process, we're concentrating on a number of things. One of them was to get healthcare pre-funded so we don't end up with a crisis and taking away employees' rights to healthcare down the road. And we managed to get that into the piece. We worked very hard to make sure teachers and state employees and municipal employees, state police were represented in that. That's happened. Right now, we're working on 2 pieces that go hand in hand with that. One is to work to find alternatives for retirement security for corrections workers. We're doing that, and we're working on a longevity incentive for state employees and teachers so that we can continue to have folks, despite what we call now the Great Resignation, and working on that. We're working on housing as well, and I'll leave it at that. We've met with advocates, and we're looking to get into the issues of housing and homelessness in particular.
Really helpful. Thank you very much, Treasurer Beth Pearce. And moving on to Auditor Doug Hoffer. What is your office's top priority during this legislative session and then following on?
Well, thank you, Ann, Claire, Bob, and the rest, and thank you all for coming tonight. Like my colleagues here, I don't get a vote in the legislature. We provide independent, objective analyses intended to inform the debate. That's the best we can do, and whether and how they use it is up to them. We've devoted considerable time in the last few years to healthcare, and I will continue to do that as long as I'm in office. It's just too big. We've looked at the enormous cost of healthcare. It's not affordable. We've looked at the all-payer model and the accountable care organization, One Care Vermont. We looked at the role and performance of the Green Mountain Care Board, and most recently, a report on state expenditures for healthcare for state employees, which was $142 million 2 years ago. And we made some recommendations on how to save a lot of money. Vermonters are spending in excess of $6 billion a year, and the costs keep going up. Had Vermont, the rate of increase was even higher than the US. Had we only grown at the rate of the US expenditures per capita for healthcare, we would have saved $1 billion in 2018, 1 year. We could have done some good work with that money at the state level and taxpayers themselves. The board itself, the Green Mountain Care Board, is not meeting its mandate to control costs and improve access. The board's oversight of OneCare is ineffective. The board has ignored hospital consolidation, and their economic and political power continues to grow. And it seems to me that's what this is all about, power. Unfortunately, I say this with respect, I know it's complicated and a heavy lift. The legislature has not demonstrated its willingness to engage on this issue, and it's very disappointing. It's their job to hold the Green Mountain Care Board accountable, because they're the only people who can hold the hospitals and the insurance companies accountable. So again, with respect, I urge you all to contact your senators and reps and encourage them to pay a lot of attention to this issue. Thank you.
Very good. And moving on to Attorney General TJ Donovan. I'm sure that you have some major priorities as the legislature gets underway. And how about you share yours for this season and moving on?
Sure, thanks, Ann. Thanks for holding this event tonight. And Claire, thank you for organizing. It's great to be with my fellow Democrats. If you hear Alvin and the Chipmunks in the background, I'm doing double duty here, trying to parent and do my role as a Democratic office holder. So that's what's going on in the background here. Look, in terms of what's going on in the legislature right now, I testified on a bill that I feel very passionately about, and that's about trying to expand the expungement bill for criminal records. My belief is simple. The best form of public safety is a good job, but you got to give people the opportunity to get past whatever mistake they've made. And it's a core democratic value to give people opportunity, to treat people with respect, to treat people with dignity, and to give people second chances. When Vermonters do well, we all do well, whether it's our economy or whether it's our public safety, and this belief that we're all in it together and we all need to lift each other up and move forward. So I echo Doug Hoffer's call to action, and please call your representatives and senators and urge them to expand the expungement bill to give Vermonters more economic opportunity, more opportunity to participate in their community, and more opportunity to participate in their kids' life. This is what public safety looks like. In terms of the work we're doing, we get a lot going on, whether it's suing big oil companies for greenwashing, for telling Vermonters that oil is somehow good for the environment, whether it's investigating Facebook, I still call them Facebook, and their Instagram platform, and this crazy notion that somehow social media is good for kids, when in my opinion, it's dangerous, and I think the science has demonstrated that. It's protecting consumers, making sure in this crazy online digital world that Vermonters are aware of the scams that are happening. Go to our website, check out the top 10 scams. You'll be surprised. And the best offense is the best defense, as I like to say. Inform yourself about what's going on. They're hard cases to enforce. Continue to fight the fight on opiates and hold those big opiate companies accountable for starting an epidemic, a pandemic, not only in this nation, across the globe. We get $60 million coming into the state for settlements that we were part of. Making sure that we continue to fight to define what privacy looks like in this 21st century. We've introduced a BIPA bill in regards to facial recognition and how that should be used sparingly, if not outright banned for many purposes. Continue to make sure that we're advocating for women's reproductive health and advancing Prop 5. And finally, making sure that those core public safety issues, protecting kids, that we're doing our job. We have a robust, what's called our ICAC unit, Internet Crimes Against Children, making sure that kids are protected, making sure that people who hurt other people are prosecuted. This is tough stuff. We got a great team at the Attorney General's office. We're working hard on behalf of Vermonters and look forward to doing more. Thanks for having me.
Very good. I want to say that if you weren't already proud to be a Democrat, you certainly would be now. These are really critical issues for our state. And it's just very energizing to me, and I hope to all of you, to hear about what our statewide electeds are doing. And these are not easy issues. And, they're doing them still during a pandemic, which I just have to say, I didn't hear one person saying, we would do more, but for this, but for the problem, we haven't been able to meet. And no, you all just sound incredibly focused and energetic, and it's very exciting to me, and I expect to all of us. So now we're going to kind of go to the broader level beyond Vermont, and we'd like to know, and we're going to start with you, TJ, and then hopefully Alvin and the Chipmunks will keep your child occupied through this answer too. And so I'm going to ask you our second question for all of you. How does the work you do as a Vermont Democrat connect to the work being done nationally by the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress?
Thanks, Ann. That's a good question. I'll save my editorial about what's happening in Washington, D.C. and try to just answer your question. Look, I think Joe Biden's doing a great job. I think President Biden is his temperament, his humanity, his humility, his patience, his kindness is welcomed. And I think when we talk about what we're doing as Vermont Democrats that align with President Biden, I would just widen it to Americans. Obviously, we have to talk about the pandemic and the recovery and the billions of dollars through President Biden's leadership that is coming into the state of Vermont and every state in this nation to recover from a once in a century pandemic. And that's Joe Biden, and that's Democrats. Let's be clear about that, about how that money was released. And the job that we now have to do as Vermont Democrats, that Lieutenant Governor Gray has spoke so eloquently about, that Doug Hoffer just spoke about, that Jim Condos spoke about, that Beth Pearce does every single day, is to make these investments. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Let us truly use this money, this federal money. It's not state money, it's federal money. And give credit where credit due. That's the Democrats. Mm-hmm. That's the Democrats. To invest wisely, to transform this state into a 21st century powerhouse that we can be, where we recognize everybody and lift everybody and provide opportunity from the cradle to the grave. That's what Vermont Democrats stand for, is opportunity, respect, and dignity, and giving people a shot to get ahead. This money from the federal government, which Joe Biden championed, is something that I think is a wonderful opportunity for Vermont Democrats to lead on and to make investments in the 21st century.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Those are great marching orders for the rest of us. Moving on to Auditor Doug Hoffer. And how does the work you do as a Vermont Democrat connect to the work being done nationally by the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress?
Well, thank you, Ann. We don't really work with the federal delegation, but we address some of the same issues, but our focus is exclusively the state of Vermont. And although I only mentioned one issue area at the outset in response to the first question, I'll mention a few others here. We did some work recently on dairy and quantified the state's support for and expenditures for the mitigation of environmental impacts of dairy. It was $285 million over 10 years. We looked at economic recovery grants used with the federal money that TJ referred to, and that program was terrible, frankly. It was very useful to a lot of people, but millions of dollars were wasted. We just did a job on workforce development, some federal programs that are administered by the Department of Labor. They do the best they can in difficult circumstances, but there's a lot of room for improvement there. I've done some work on Veggie, which is the state's flagship incentive program, which is also wasting millions of dollars. There's a theme here. I also did a report a couple of years ago on the remote worker grant program, and yes, wasting money. We looked at Lake Champlain cleanup, very important issue that Beth worked on quite a bit. And we were interested in how the first $100 million had been spent. And while none of it was wasted, the priorities were a little skewed. I think they're getting better. We did a job that I told TJ about a few years ago. I was curious about how much we spend on public safety, state and local. And shockingly to me, I knew nothing about this, the state of Vermont and local government spent $575 million in 1 year in a state with 330,000 people. So my question to TJ and Dick Sears and a lot of other people is, could we, do a better job for less money? I don't know the answer, but I think it's worthwhile asking. We did an interesting job on the Child Protection Registry. We have a report coming out in a couple of weeks on dam safety at the Department of Environmental Conservation. And sadly, we have to spend way too much time looking at towns that have tax increment financing districts, which is required by statute and drives me completely insane. So that's some of the stuff we work on, but call me if you want to talk more.
That is a very wide and broad group of issues, and we are very fortunate to know that we have an auditor who's really on the job in so many different areas. Thank you. Treasurer Beth Pearce, how does your work as a Vermont Democrat connect to the work being done nationally by the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress?
So first, I'd like to point something. TJ talked about this being transformative and the money that we have, and thank the Biden administration. And I do. In a normal average year, we probably have about $350 million of non-pension of operating cash in the bank. The other day, we had 1.5 billion. 1.5 billion is a lot of money. And this is a transformational period. The governor used that term in his speech, but his idea of transformation and his idea of what growing the economy looks like and growing the state and making it a healthy state is very different than what I have, what TJ has, what all of us have. And for me, this is an opportunity to do that. You look at the legislature, and they're going to look at programs such as homelessness. They're going to look at ways that we can use these dollars, affordable housing, environmental issues. I worked very hard on the Global Warming Solutions Act. TJ and I both testified in favor of it, took a little heat on the process. And I did a lot of arm twisting with some of the legislators during the veto process. We can do things to work and move this state in the right direction with the leadership that we have here in the legislature and in our offices. And we want to be able to be a part of that and make the state a more prosperous place to live. I don't want to be cutting budgets in the future as we move forward. I want to grow the economy. I want to grow it for every single person. And that's how we do things as Democrats. We're working very closely with the administration on a number of issues. During the Trump administration, they closed down all shareholder abilities to change corporate America, the proxies, the annual meetings, and how that worked. And that has been significantly overturned, including a new requirement for environmental disclosure by companies that report to the SEC. That doesn't sound all that wild and exciting, but it's extraordinarily important. We're a part of that, and we work very closely with our other treasurers to make that happen. We're on calls with the White House. We've had some calls with the SEC on the proposed regulations, working with the Council of Economic Advisors. So we're working on that. We have some particular issues that we're interested in, again, in homelessness and with the Biden administration. ABLE is a program called Achieving a Better Life Experience. It's for individuals with disabilities. We have it in Vermont. We wrote that in Vermont. We've done a great job here, but there are changes that can be done at the federal level to make it better. So those are the types of things we're working on. It's a team effort. You talk about restorative justice. You talk about Doug and keeping an eye on how we're all doing, and Jim in terms of our right to vote. We're all in this together. Molly, we're all in this together. And I think that's important. So thank you.
Very good. And Secretary of State Jim Condos, again, the work you do as a Vermont Democrat, and I think it does connect nationally to what the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress are focused on. I have a feeling there's a connection there.
There certainly is, but I'm not going to speak about elections at this point. I think I sort of mentioned it last time, but the governor in his State of the State and his budget address talked about workforce development and whatever, and he brought up several points. Well, I want to just read the topics from a press release that my office put out on November 17th. November 17th, two months before he spoke. We've actually enacted already fast track licensing, credit for military experience, apprenticeships pathways, welcoming new Americans and helping them get to work. These are people who are were licensed in their former countries, have the experience, have the education, but haven't met the Vermont laws or whatever. So the US laws. So we've worked on this stuff. TJ, second chance determinations. We recognize fully that a criminal conviction should not be a permanent or automatic barrier to preventing someone from having a professional license going forward. Compact license, we just enacted, actually, let's see, today's the second. Yesterday was the first day of the nurse compact, which allows nurses from around the country to move to Vermont and be licensed immediately. We've been working hard to cut red tape for years in this area. You know, we believe that the Office of Professional Regulation actually oversees 50 professions, and that's only about probably maybe 60% of the professions that are licensed by Vermont. But we oversee about 60%, 50 professions, and we have about 80,000 license holders. And we've been working hard to find ways to put people back to work. And you know, as like TJ was saying, that second chance determination, that's a key factor, because it used to be that a lot of these boards would not let anybody, if you had a conviction, that was it, you were done, you couldn't get your license back. Now we're looking at it and saying, okay, what were the conditions that were applied? Why did it occur that way? New Americans coming in. We have doctors coming into the United States from other countries that are not allowed to practice here because they didn't go to med school here. So, you know, we're looking at all these different factors. We're looking at how we can make it easier. And Vermont is one of the very few states that has been recognized by both the Obama and the Trump administration for its work on professional regulation, that we're doing it right. I mean, we only oversee 50 professions. California, I think, oversees like 1,000 professions. For a lot of these states, the professional regulation is really about putting money in the bank. For us, it's about our mission, our mission is to protect the public. And that's what we strive to do.
Thank you very much. Very good. And Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, same question. How does the work you do as a Vermont Democrat connect to the work being done nationally by the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress?
Not just the work I do. I think it's the work that everyone on this call is a statewide elected and Democrats do. The president's doing really well. And TJ alluded to this, which is showing up, listening, being there for communities, leading with civility at a time where we need to see that. We need leaders to lead with their values. But this is a historic moment. I was at the White House with lieutenant governors and mayors in November, and we were briefed and reminded that 95% of federal funding, both through the American Rescue Plan Act and through the bipartisan infrastructure plan, is going to states. So there is this golden moment, right? That the Democrats, as TJ mentioned, are delivering for states across this country, but also delivering for communities and municipalities across Vermont. And so I think it's really, really important as more towns get broadband, that we remember that's because of the bipartisan infrastructure plan and our legislature delivering, right? As Westford gets water and sewer so they can build more housing, that's because of the bipartisan infrastructure plan. I think the challenge is that with Build Back Better stalled, and we're so lucky to have a congressional delegation that's pushing for that to be chopped up so that childcare can still happen and that hopefully paid family and medical leave can still happen. A lot of the support for workforce development can still happen. And while we wait for that, we still can take action here at home with the $2.7 billion we have coming to Vermont. And the general fund surplus that I think it's incredible. And that's, for me, the two first seat at the table events that I did this session. We have more to come. The first one was just on how do we build the workforce to meet our climate action plan, really elevating the voices of Vermont Works for Women, our renewable energy sector, and kind of leaving the governor no option, right? We're going to do it. and we're going to build the workforce. It's going to happen, right? And it's an exciting moment where Vermont's leading. And then second, just to come back to the mental health crisis that we're seeing across the state, I think there's an opportunity for the Democrats to lead with a lot of compassion and recognize that we have failed to invest in a system that on average, I learned on Monday, over the last year, 392 kids have spent on average 4 days in the emergency room. That's terrible. And we're seeing the results of a lack of investment just in human services and in our human infrastructure and care system. So I think there's a lot of ways for us, in short and some, to deliver on the promises of the Biden administration right here at home through investing in a lot of the programs that we see Vermonters wanting us to deliver on every single day.
Thank you. I am not going to say anything more because we have many, many questions and not so much time, except for to say that I am really struck by Beth Pearce, you said it's really a team effort, and that's really what came through. I heard almost each one of you in your answers crediting and understanding how, by working together, you're stronger and we're more able to, really bring Vermont back better. So with that, I see there's lots of questions, and I guess you'll probably start with the first ones that came in, Claire, or however you want to do it. So we won't have time for all of them. They're all great, I'm sure, but take it away, Claire. Why don't you ask?
Sure thing. Thanks, Anne. So our first question is for TJ, and again, if a couple of other folks want to chime in a little bit. Also, I'm sorry, my dog is very noisy right now, so I apologize, folks. But this comes from Melinda Moulton, and Melinda's asking to TJ. Hi, Melinda. She's saying, I'm a member of the Executive Council for the Williston Restorative Justice Center. I have a deep and profound respect for the work being done to restore justice rather than creating shame and suffering. There is concern that the state of Vermont may not fund this work to the level it has or to the level it should be funded. Can you explain why you feel the state should invest in our work of community justice programs around the state instead of cutting funding based on your experience?
Sure. Great question, Melinda. Great to hear from you. I think I can see you. I don't know if you're on or not.
Yes.
But good to see you. Great question. I am a 100% believer and advocate of restorative justice. Started it, built it out during my time when nobody else was talking about it as Chittenden County State's Attorney. And one of the issues we have in our state when it comes to criminal justice issues is geographic justice, because we have 14 different counties and people can be treated differently based on where they're arrested and where they're prosecuted, based on the services, and frankly, based on the philosophy of a certain prosecutor. I think all people should be given the same opportunity to get ahead, as Jim Condos talked about those second chances. I'm a big believer. I'm a beneficiary of multiple second chances, as we all are. And we have to recognize that everybody has talent. Not everybody has the opportunity. And it's about opportunity. And so when I became Attorney General, understanding that issue of lack of geographic justice and access to justice, I made sure that we built out from the Attorney General's office three different levels of restorative justice in every county in this state, from making sure that we now have pretrial services for people who may have acute needs, whether it's addiction or mental health issues, as the Lieutenant Governor spoke about, making sure that we have these direct diversion programs out of the criminal justice system into restorative justice programs, such as the one that you're working on in Williston, Melinda, and making sure that we change the law to have presumptive referrals to diversion, again, outside the criminal justice system. For the first time in our state's history, we now have restorative justice principles and programs in every county of our state. The funding issue is a chronic perennial issue. I'm getting ready to testify on Friday about my budget, which includes a lot of this stuff. And we are always struggling because here's another issue. A part of how it's funded is a fee for service. Doug Hoffer can talk about the problem with that with healthcare. We shouldn't have the same with criminal justice, a fee for service. If we're talking about truly building community justice, truly providing a place where not only victims but offenders can come together and heal and recognize that they're part of this community together, then it has to be part of our core budget. That means general fund dollars. And let me tell you something about democratic values. You want to see values?
Make it quick, TJ, make it quick. Wrap it up.
This is important. This is important. You want to talk about values? Look at our budget. That's a statement of values. So Melinda, I'm with you 100%. Let's make it part of our core budget. Let's make it funded by general fund dollars and not ask the participants to pay.
Very well said.
Thank you.
I'm just making sure we have time because I see it's so wonderful that we have a bunch of questions. Thank you very much.
And everyone, just because I feel like that really did encompass, yes, let's commit ourselves to these new moments. I do, because I know it's on the top of everyone's mind, and want to credit Bruce Olson, who was our chair and saw us through the 2020 election. So thank you, Bruce. Got these folks reelected and elected. Bruce asked, how do we elect a Democrat to the governor's office? Who wants to take this one first? Because I know it's on the top of everyone's mind.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, real quickly, for what it's worth, there was a lot of talk last year and the year before about, oh, the governor's done a great job on COVID. That's nice. But if you get back to the issues that matter to most people in Vermont, he's still the same guy who doesn't agree with us on almost every major issue. We should all be talking about that all the time.
Yep.
If it's okay, I'd like to follow up on that. This is Beth. Again, I was talking about the differences between the governor and us. We invest in communities. We believe that in people, and frankly, his idea of a society that is prosperous is way different than ours. We want to help individuals and make sure that individuals with homelessness, individuals that are experiencing disabilities, that they are protected and part of our government and given the same opportunities as every single person. I said earlier, everyone should have an opportunity for a lifetime of financial well-being. They should have an opportunity for social justice. They should have an opportunity for economic justice. We need to have a governor that does that. We don't.
Okay. Does anyone else of you want to? Okay, moving on to the next question, Claire.
So for our next question, this one comes from for everyone, sorry. I think the person that prompted me to put this on the list, but in general, I know we're all wondering, housing is a major crisis in Vermont right now. And so we're curious to know, what are your individual offices doing to ameliorate this crisis and help us get back on track and make Vermont, the livable Vermont we all want to see?
I see Jim's hand going up. Go ahead. You can start it off, Jim.
So let me start by saying, first of all, that my office doesn't have any authority over housing, but my past history, when I was city council chair in South Burlington and a state senator, I was really instrumental. Doug knows this. I worked with Peter Clavel when I became chair of the South Burlington City Council to try to develop more affordable housing in South Burlington. And you got to have the want. You got to be willing to step up and say this. I remember I was mowing my lawn and somebody stopped. This little old lady on the street stopped and comes across the street and says to me, "We have enough affordable housing," goes back and gets in her car. And we were just getting started. But I think that, it's not just a matter of building the affordable housing, but where you're building it. For instance, one of the major developers wanted to build, as he said to me, affordable housing out by the Shelburne, South Burlington town line. And I said, well, that's great. Who's paying for the bus service to get there for the affordable housing? These are the factors that have to be considered. Montpelier is looking at a bond issue this coming town meeting day to buy the old Elks Club, which is over on Route 2 near the roundabout. And frankly, they're saying, well, it's a good place to put affordable housing. I disagree. I don't think it is a good place to put affordable housing. Affordable housing needs to be in a place that is accessible, that people can have bus service or whatever to be, or walking distance to get to the grocery store or the bank or whatever. So it really does we have to be careful. It's not just easy to, it's easy to say we're going to build affordable housing, but there's a lot of other factors that have to be considered.
Thank you. And Doug Hoffer.
Yeah, very briefly, thank you. Jim's right. There's a lot to this. The governor likes to say he supports affordable housing, but then he wants housing for people who make $120,000 a year, which is not a lot of money in Vermont for some people. But the bottom line is it needs to be perpetually affordable. And what the community CHT does in Burlington, which built on the land trust model 35 years ago, is to say it's shared equity. If you can't make it affordable for the family that's going to buy it when you leave, then it was only affordable once. That doesn't solve the problem over the next 2 generations. And nobody, well, a lot of people talk about it, but the governor never talks about it. And I encourage you to tell your reps, make sure that that's part of the conversation.
Okay, Beth, go ahead.
Sure. So a couple of things on this. Number one, we have and made housing a priority in our local government investment fund. We've worked with Vermont Housing Finance Association and Champlain CHT, good organization, Doug. One of the big things for us is giving them the money. Now, right now, we're going to get some Fed dollars, but for years and years and years, they did not get the amount of money. This is VHCB, Vermont Housing Conservation Board. There's a statute that says they're going to get X amount of the property transfer tax. And every year there was not my favorite part of legislation, which is notwithstanding any law to the contrary, and then do what you're not supposed to do. And in this case, it shorted the funds for that. We did a report on housing, trying to talk about some of these issues, talking about some of the voucher programs and the like. But the result of that is that they're still shorted, but they were shorted less. And so we want to do more there to try to help with that. But that's a big issue. And it gets to the Doug's point, too, about the fact that the governor's interest in housing is different. Again, when we did that report and we worked on that issue, we had a public hearing and we had a woman who was experiencing homelessness talk about her issues. And it's just incredible to me that we're doing the kind of things we're doing. We've got I remember when the folks were sitting on the steps at the State House and had a chance to talk to a number of those folks. And the governor, they were pushing to have, we had FEMA dollars, pushing to get it to March 30th. And he did say to March 1st, but I hate to tell him, but the month of March is kind of cold in Vermont. And maybe we should make sure that we're doing everything we can to assist individuals. I don't think he gets it. And I do think that the folks here need to do something about it. And we're going to stand up again and again, not just this temporary financing. And again, I will agree with you, Doug, perpetually affordable is the bottom line. So thank you.
All right, folks. Happy to step in. I believe this is Julie's question. And VT Digger just spoke of 2 pieces of legislation that sound good to me. Where do Dems stand on, number 1, ranked choice voting, and number 2, natural, such as non-embalming burials?
So let me start, because both of those are obviously in my warehouse, my wheelhouse. But as far as the natural organic burial, we're already working with the legislature on this one. This is something that our office supports. It. We do license the funeral home directors and funeral homes themselves, and we are working on this language at the current time. So that's that one. That's an easy one. The ranked choice voting. Let me first say I support it, but let me say secondly, not this year. And the reason is right now, for the last 6 weeks and going up until and through town meeting day, we're focused on town meeting, and we're getting hundreds of calls from towns and that we have to support. We have the smallest elections team in the country, 5 people. So it's kind of hard. We're all swamped. We have things like we have new tabulators coming for the primary in August and the general election. We have a new vote by mail, ballot printing contract that we're just now finalizing the contract. We have the mailing of those ballots to people for the general election. As soon as town meeting day is over, our focus switches completely to the statewide primary immediately, and it just there's no reasonable term or time for us to start now when this is something that we can deal with next January. So I've been a supporter. When I was a state senator, I actually introduced language for what was called then in IRV, instant runoff voting. And I support it. And what we're saying at this point in time is we were willing to go forward. We're willing to look at 2024 presidential primary because that's a real easy election to do. There's going to be a tremendous amount of expense putting out education to the public all across the state on how it will work. We want to do this, but we just can't. We don't have the bandwidth right now to deal with it in the legislature. And you know what? There's a TV ad, and one of the legislators says it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. No, it's not. It really isn't. There's a lot that has to go on. For instance, if ranked choice voting is triggered, half the towns do not have tabulators, and they're not going to be able to do this by hand. So we're going to have to move the ballots to someplace. Do we do it centralized in the county, centralized in the state? And how are we paying for moving all of those ballots and the security of those ballots? We have to determine. Right now, the clerks have to certify the election within 48 hours of the election. And then we have to certify the election overall within 7 days of the election. Those dates will have to probably move out.
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
There's an awful lot that has to be done, and we're just saying we don't have the time or the wherewithal to deal with it right now.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, I have a feeling it's the ranked choice voting more than the organic burial, but feel free to answer either or both.
Well, I grew up on a farm and there's lots of organic burials of animals. So well acquainted in some way with the issue. But I'll keep it really brief. I think, well, one, if either came before the Senate and there was a tie-breaking vote, they'd have my support. I tend to support the move to ranked choice voting, but I think it's a conversation that we start now, and we have it with Vermonters. Vermonters are just still getting acquainted with vote by mail, and they want to know whether that's going to happen this year or in the fall. And making sure that that process goes as well as it did last time, I think is really important. I also believe we have to defer to the experts. Our Secretary of State is one of the best in the nation, if not the best. And so if he says, let's give it a little more time, we give it a little more time. But I want to say this, and I say this with candor and empathy and the utmost respect. Vermonters, I think right now, really, really want us as Democrats to deliver on recovering from this pandemic, on childcare. Our parents with kids with mental health crisis want our support. Our nurses, the ER, who are ready to walk off the job because they're just not making enough money, not enough hazard pay. For me, that's where I really want us to be able to deliver. And again, legislative leaders, separate body, separate office, they have to make their decisions. But I hope at the end of this session, we can walk away as Democrats really having delivered for Vermont, and Vermonters get to feel it.
Well, I think I've got a good one here. I think it's a great way to wrap up. What is the best way Democrats can support the efforts to pass Prop 5, the Reproductive Liberty Amendment?
I'll just do my closing. So at the same time, first, thank you. Thanks for bringing us together tonight. This is fun. Great to see so many names and faces and folks from every corner of the state zooming in. I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to be out in our communities, getting Vermonters excited, acquainted. I think there's always that feeling of sort of inside of Montpelier and outside of Montpelier, but this is a big deal for our state. And it should make all of us concerned as Vermonters when reproductive rights are under attack anywhere, and why it's so important for us to take action here in Vermont. And so getting Vermonters interested, excited, engaged, already thinking about what's going to happen in November so that none of us are taking the outcome for granted, and that we're ready to get Proposition 5 across the line in November.
Well, two things. I want to just say before I start on that, Jim, I know you believe in rank file voting. I also trust you when you say that you've got a lot of work to do. Bottom line for me is I know that you don't divert things by saying we got to delay it or we got to do a study or whatever it might be. I trust you. And if you say that, we want to get it right so the Republican naysayers don't come back and haunt us with this later on. Reproductive rights. As another woman constitutional officer, this is near and dear to my heart. We need to take care of this. When I think about reproductive rights, the lack of access to reproductive rights, it really affects individuals of color, low-income individuals, vulnerable individuals, and it creates a two-class society. And I just won't have that. And that's what we need to continue to work together to make sure that this goes through.
I think at the statewide level, I think every one of us would support and will stand up to speak on this. It's not something that we're shy about. I've been, for what it's worth, politically, I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I think every time I've run for election, because I've been 100% behind. And I think this is. I remember having a conversation with my. I guess I'll say it, my ex-mother-in-law, but she was an MD, and she said she really feared, and she was very conservative, but she really feared going back to the 50s and 60s and what we had in that time for abortion rights, and as conservative as she was, she supported Planned Parenthood, she supported abortion rights. Because she recognized the importance. And I can't tell you how many times I've said to people who try to argue with me about it that, hey, look, it's not you or me that need to make this decision. It's the woman who's pregnant. And, they're the ones that should be making this decision with their provider and going forward from there. So that's just the way I feel. And I've always felt that way.
Support Prop 5, happy to continue to do the legal work that we've done really the last 5 years, working collaboratively with the legislature to advance this, and want to give a shout out to Senator Ginny Lyons, who's been a champion on getting Prop 5 to the voters of Vermont, and continue to speak out really, as I think Lieutenant Governor Gray and Treasurer Pearce talked about, these other states, whether it's Mississippi or Texas, and these really draconian laws that are taking away the constitutional rights of women. Vermont will always, as long as I'm Attorney General, speak up and oppose those laws.
We're about to close. And so, Doug, everybody else spoke on this. Do you want to have a
Sure.
word here?
Very simple. It's a no-brainer what they said.
Very good. All right. Well, I'm very proud that we're actually closing at 7. And I'm also very proud to be part of this conversation. And we can just feel so good knowing that we have folks who are leading us at the very highest levels of our government, who are protecting the most vulnerable, who are caring about housing, who are making sure that, as Attorney General Donovan said, people get a second chance, who are looking out for whether it be people with mental health issues or new Americans, or workers or protecting us from grifters and people who would do us harm through overseeing the occupations. We have such great leaders in the State House, and we have really great opportunities to build on that with, as you said, this federal money that's coming in that we need to all remember and all remind everybody is due to the Biden administration. And so I think that is a good closing point. Thank you all very much. It was really wonderful to have all of you and to see all these active, energetic Democrats who are going to make sure that we elect wonderful Democrats to every office once again. All right. Thanks a lot. Good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our elected officials, you're all wonderful. Appreciate y'all.